Welcome to the return of Johanna Carroll's Dialogue with Divinity. The conversation continues. Do you need to rediscover yourself? Or to redefine your destiny and your purpose? In this season-ending edition, Johanna will be giving us a very essential and empowering teaching on the reinvention of self. Now we bring you our host, international intuitive, author, and spiritual teacher, Johanna Carroll.
Hi, everybody. This is Johanna Carroll, your host of Dialogue with Divinity. Thank you so much for joining us today. Well, I hope you've had a good week. It's been an interesting time that we're living in right now. So we decided that today we really want to focus on you. And focusing on you is all about the reinvention of self. That's the title of our show today. And I know, Gary, a couple of months ago, we said, are we messing with the blessing? Are we messing with the blessing? And I don't mean to laugh about that, but we really have to take a look at what does that particular message mean as we're going into the reinvention of self. So the blessing is an opportunity that chaos presents us with. And that's like, oh, really? You got to be kidding me. We have to remember that in metaphysics, chaos is considered to be the precursor to change. And some of us are going kicking and screaming, fighting that. Yet sometimes the currents or the river of life carries us along. And we've got to let the universe do its best work through us and with us. So as I've said for many, many weeks now, in this Aquarian age that we're in, and particularly this historical time that we're living in, which is very chaotic globally, we are either going to repeat or advance. So you're either going to continue riding the merry-go-round of life, and maybe that's enjoyable for you, and maybe on some level it is working. However, even within that, I'd like you to take a little bit of a look at what you could change, how you can get off the merry-go-round, be in the bridge, which is the conduit to your future, so that you can advance, grow as a person, evolve as a soul. Really and truly, this is the energy that's needed. Not only for yourself right now, but your family, your friends, and the world at large. So we have to remember that we have a choice. We can take a look at the merry-go-round and the repetition that we're doing, and take a look at what's really working, and then where we would like to see some kind of change. So the vision that I'd like to start with, Gary, is very symbolic and it's very metaphorical. I want people to think of a house and that they're in a hallway. So that represents a state of consciousness, where your mind is. Okay, so we're going to say that the house is where you dwell with your thinking. And then I want you to imagine that you're walking down this hallway and there's all these doorways on the left and these doorways on the right. So we're going to just simply say that the left is your past and the right is your future. The doors represent experience and opportunity. So I'd actually like all of you that are listening right now, maybe you want to listen to this show more than once. First of all, I'd like you to label the doors that are on the left. What can you let go of? So let's just say, let's label one of them with people. Then we'll go to the next door and we'll label it with experiences. Then let's label the next door in lifestyle. Let's look at your finances. Let's look at your career. You can have as many doorways as you want. What I'm really saying is that we need to close some of these doors very gently with grace and ease, which will give us a greater sense of awareness. So the blessing is always wisdom. We also need to remember that nothing positive is birthed in fear or anger. Hate halts. It prevents you. Love brings you more awareness. So that's that movement that we're talking about. It allows ascension to really occur. Okay, so what we're going to do is, Gary, let me just ask you a question. So we're talking about hallways and doorways and all of that. What would that look like for you?
Like a house.
Yeah.
You are considered a house, a temple, so to speak. So, houses have rooms. Houses have compartments. So, that would be it, a house.
Okay, so we're going to take a look at that. Our house is our temple. It's our body. It's also where we rest our thoughts, our feelings, and our relationship to the divine. So once you have, this is going to sound like a really easy thing to do. It's actually not. This may take you a couple of hours. It may take you a couple of weeks. Take your time with this. So my desire today is to really give you a tool that's really going to help you. And so consider this not necessarily a psychological review, but a review of the soul. And so sometimes in a chaotic situation, we really have to dive deep down into our soul and do a cosmic review. And that's really what I'm asking you to do. All right, so as you are closing those doors, you might want to just take a look at those labels, whether you have a journal, pad of paper, you're doing it on a computer. Spend some time with each one of those things. The financial thing right now and the career thing is really big. One thing that I forgot to mention was your health. So I think we need to have a doorway to the health too. You're not saying I'm not going to be healthy anymore. You're going to take a look at what you are doing to support your well-being, your health, what you can let go of. So for a lot of people, this has to do with what you are feeding your body. And so that's our thoughts, our feelings, and literally the food. Gary, do you think a lot of people are doing a lot of stress eating right now? Comfort food? Oops. Okay. I don't see him. Hear him. I'm going to answer the question for Gary. People are definitely, and I know I include myself, do I make brownies today or, do I have a stalk of celery? So those are extremes on some level. So we want to take a look at how are we feeding ourselves with our thoughts, with our feelings, and literally our nutrition, our food. So the number one goal in terms of what you are feeding yourself is this is what you're telling, not just your body, but your experience of life in the direction you're going to go. You're either going to repeat or you're going to be on the bridge of light in the present moment that's going to advance you to the future. So the goal really spiritually is to be fed by your connection to the divine. And this is how we co-create with the divine. So in terms of my question to you before, Gary, the question was, do you think people are doing a lot of comfort food, feeding themselves? Are they being conscious of food choices? And the reason that I'm asking is I've noticed this for myself because anything that's not natural on some level to the body will block the light of your spirit. Fear, of course, being one. But what are you thinking as far as food choices and comfort food? What are people really feeding themselves?
Well, I would like to think that their choices are sound. We've eliminated processed foods out of our diet, soda. All kinds of things that are detrimental to the body. Carbohydrates, we take a really a good look at that. We don't eat a lot of bread because bread has yeast and all kinds of things. And again, the carb issues is problematic in and of itself. But people, I would like to think that they're making good choices. And as a matter of fact, there's so many different diets out there. You have keto diet, you have the paleo diet, you have Nutrisystem, which is more of a fast or kind of a get slim fast kind of thing. But I think the two diets that have worked for us is a combination of the keto and the paleo, where you eat meat, you eat fruits, you eat vegetables, and you stay away from the carbs. You look at Milk, when it comes to milk, we do almond milk. We don't drink natural vitamin D milk from cows. Cheese, we still do the cheese because that's fat. I mean, it can be helpful. But no, it's something that I would like to think that people are making more conscious choices. People are considering their diet. People are giving recognition of the fact that if they don't change their diet, it could lead to their demise. So you have also vegans too as well.
It affects your immune system. And I think for all of you that are listening right now, we still have a global situation going on. So it's not to instill fear in you. So if we're on the merry-go-round of repeat, maybe we need to get rid of the word diet and just look at it as different food choices, lifestyle choices, because you don't want to do anything that's compromising your immune system. But from a spiritual point of view, that's creating a heaviness in your system, so the light really cannot penetrate. It's there, but you can't access it as readily. So all I'm saying is that understand that whatever you are feeding yourself, that temple of your body, that house that we're talking about, and we're looking at the door on the left-hand side in the hallway represents your present moment. So if you've got a doorway and you've labeled it nutrition, health, what you're feeding yourself, what are the negative thoughts? What are the food sources? I really have found a lot of people, Gary, which I think is great, are starting gardens. It kind of goes back to the victory gardens, of World War II, if they're able to. So even if it's like a tomato plant on your patio or your porch or something like that, I'm not saying you guys need to completely change everything you do in a radical way. Do it gradually. So the other thing I want you to remember in the metaphysical world is we take a look at things that can replace and enhance. Replace and enhance. So, for instance, there's a lot of really good chocolate out there that's not loaded with sugar. It's organic, it's cacao, it's, 95%. So all I'm just saying is, maybe you might want to take a look at one thing that you can change and understand for the greater good of you advancing is really connecting to a higher frequency of energy. So what does that really mean? We've all been noticing lately that the energy around us as an individual person, it's like we're all listening to a new song. So we all have what's called a natural soul tone. It's a vibrational frequency. And we've talked about the 528 hertz and the solfeggio scale and all of that really being a very accessible tone that you can listen to on YouTube. A lot of people are also having a little bit of a challenge with sleep right now. And this is interesting, Gary. I'm talking to a lot of my clients and they're saying their whole sleep pattern has changed. It's like, I don't want to take a nap in the middle of the afternoon, but I really need to. If you can, allow yourself to do that. Your body is shifting and adjusting to a new frequency and a new energy so that we can all heal on a much more profound level. Remember, it's body, mind, and spirit. I like to say it's spirit, mind, emotions, then body. So we really want to allow ascension to occur. And so how do we do that? When you're looking at all these doors on the left-hand side of your past, things you can change, things that are working that you bring forward into the present moment with you. Intend with clarity. We've talked about this before. Intention is the first law of manifestation. It's the why. Why do you want to do this? So let's just say in serving your own soul, it's not about being selfish, serving your own soul. It's really because I want to be happier, I want to be healthier. The main thing is we really want to return to the natural state of the soul, which is joy, peace, happiness. It really and truly is available to all of us. So I would like all of you in the things that you're reviewing in the present moment to acknowledge what you really do love about your life. All those doors that we took a look at. What do you love? Write it down. Not what it would look like, what it would feel like. I'm not asking you to do a vision board. I'm not asking you to sit and meditate for an hour and take a picture of your future. I also feel very strongly, Gary, that a lot of even the spiritual practices that we've done in the past, those are changing as well. I'm not saying they're bad, but if there's something that's not quite working for you, I'm hearing this from a lot of people. I just can't meditate like I used to. I'm distracted a lot. Obviously, there's a lot of mental distraction going on. Do an active meditation. Go for a walk. Put the music on. Dance around your house. Get the energy out of your system. So even in your spiritual practices, what are the spiritual practices that are working that you absolutely love? Don't make it complicated. So, Gary, are you thinking that or seeing that things are presenting in a new way, even spiritually? What are your thoughts on that?
To be honest with you, I haven't really seen a whole lot of change. I mean, we do here the Time to Om hour, which is an hour of meditation accompanied by chants and music.
Uh-huh.
Now, at the same time, now to check what I just said, I just realized people in the past would use, or rarely use for that matter, music. They would use tuning forks and things of that nature. So I think today in the podcast age and in the digital age, people have used music for meditation. They have used it they would begin with the exercise of breathing, and then they would allow themselves to use a backdrop of music, which is still good. So I think it works for those people who may feel that, I just can't meditate, I just can't close my eyes and everything. But having a backdrop of meditative type music could still keep you in a state, if you've prepared properly, to keep you in a meditative state, still have your mind functioning, still have your mind in motion rather than in neutral, where you can achieve spiritual, you can receive information and, so to speak, download beneficial, spiritual and impactful messages. I mean, that's just my perspective of it based on what I've seen here and been able to achieve in my life. In the past, I've also used music, sacred music, to kind of, at the end of the day, use as a backdrop to kind of get me into a moment of quietness and contemplation. So I think for me, meditation has become contemplation. And that's good. And music has been used as a means, as a pocket or a backdrop to help you maintain that state where you could receive very beneficial and impactful information.
Well, we know that sound is the first law of creation. If we look at from a biblical point of view, Book of Genesis, what's the first line? God said, let there be light, let there be life, let there be consciousness. So it created what's called a carrier wave of creation. Those carrier waves of creation have always been in existence. The frequency around those carrier waves of creation has changed a little bit. Always available, but at a higher frequency level. Did you know, I'm sure you do, the very first language of man was dance and movement that was connected to nature. So the wind, the rain, water moving. So for those of you who are in a chaotic situation and would like change to show up, and you're not sure how to go about it from your mind, I'm going to really encourage you to, I'm not saying to necessarily do some acid rock or anything like that, but I am, because that's in pretty dense frequency. Interesting. I would say find some kind of sounds of nature. You can find this all over the internet, particularly YouTube. There's beautiful things out there. Also, I personally love the music of Mitan and Deva Premal, Devapremal.
Yeah,
they are an amazing couple who I had the pleasure to meet probably over 30 years ago in Sedona when I was living there. And they chant the ancient Sanskrit chants of sound in a way that when you are listening to this, you naturally drop down into a meditative state. So the sound, the carrier waves carry you to that place. And I've attended many of their concerts, both in Sedona and here in California. And the thing that I love about it, see, this is the advanced change that I'm talking about. Instead of applauding, no applause. You go down into, you close your eyes and you go into meditation. So what happens in that particular environment, whether you're in your home listening to it or you're literally in a concert hall in the past, it gets really quiet. I mean, I'm talking about, 1,000 people. It's amazing. So we're going to hold that thought for a moment about how sound is the carrier wave of creation and maybe how you can all change or make a new selection of the sound or the music that you're listening to that will naturally carry you forward into advancing your soul on that frequency. So we're going to take a break and we'll be right back.
This is Gary Purefoy, co-owner and program director of MTR, with a very important announcement. Now, what you've come to know to be Metaphysical Talk Radio over the past several years will soon be changed to Metaphysical Talk Podcasting. Now, we will retain our main feature programs, which is Johanna Carroll's Dialogue with Divinity, the Triple Goddess Moon Hour, the Time to Om Hour, and a new program entitled Metaphysical Talk Forum with Inger Purefoy. Now, the live streaming station of Metaphysical Talk Radio will be replaced by the Unified Arts Radio Network, a program format devoted to celebrating our diversity and the harmonious and unifying exchange between cultures which takes place in the performing arts and entertainment, which has also been known as the universal language. Now, you will still be able to locate our main podcast features on Metaphysical Talk Radio where you've always found them, starting with our main website at metaphysicaltalkradio.com and other podcast distribution platforms. Now, the exact date of this change from Metaphysical Talk Radio to the Unified Arts Radio Network has yet to be determined. However, we encourage you to continue with us, watch this space, and we'd like to thank you for being a part of our listening family and encourage you to continue to do so even in the future when we enter into our new assignment, which will be the Unified Arts Radio Network. Until that time, take care, be safe, and we'll see you soon. Now, we are actually some 7, perhaps maybe even 8 weeks out from the official start of the Unified Radio Network broadcasting, and it will also include on Sundays this very program, Dialogue with Divinity. The conversation continues, and we will also air previous restored programs of Dialogue with Divinity going as far back as 2008. So, Johanna, you will still be showcased nonetheless, even on the Unified Arts radio network, because your message, to say the least, and we've been talking about it here, is very unifying, and it's very, very essential to, some of the things that we have to deal with in this crazy day we live in.
Yeah, it is. It's really, it's amazing. That leads me to another thing. I do want to complete very quickly what you all can do so that you can feel like you're advancing, closing those doors to the past, really acknowledging the blessings, which is wisdom, and how you can open those doors to the future in a new and different way. So I'm really going to repeat that sound is the carrier wave of creation. So remember, every thought, every feeling, everything you say and do is instructions to the other side. We need to remember that. And so when we intend what the changes are, we have to do that with clarity. So acknowledge what you do love about your life. Write down, maybe, not what it would look like, but this is really important. What would it feel like? So I know in the past, vision boards, painting a picture of the future, is that really going to work for you right now? I'm not saying you shouldn't do it if it has worked. All I am offering to you is if we're advancing and we're not repeating things in the past and we feel like we're stuck on some level, with that repeat button, how can you wake up in the morning and say, there's really nothing missing, everything is... all systems are operational spiritually. All spiritual systems are operational. And I am feeling happy. And I'm feeling peaceful. And I'm not going to let the outside world interfere with my dance of life. So I'm really going to encourage you to write down again, not what it would look like. Don't paint a picture or a vision. What would it feel like? And we're talking about what would it feel like. So I'm saying allow yourself to feel that now. And that's why dance, music, sound is so important. So, you're really saying to the universe, okay, I'm putting my order in. So maybe we need to change our order. So another thing I really want to talk about is when we're cleaning out our karmic closet. Karma's unfinished business. It sort of has gotten a bad rap over the years. Karma is unfinished business. And actually, it's one of the reasons why we reincarnated, to experience life again so we can grow and we can advance. And in this Aquarian age, that's a very fast energy. Time really is a very interesting concept right now. The universe has always operated on the sense of timelessness. And for those of you who have been in love or a state of bliss or just really enjoying your life at some level, we do lose a sense of time. When we're in the creative self, we're in the divine self. So when we're clearing out that karmic closet, maybe of people that are no longer serving our journey on some level, not being selfish. It's awareness. Leave them with blessing and love, what you learned about yourself. And also, I would say, I would really encourage you to throw out old resentments, because resentment, bitterness, that is Piscean energy. Remember, Piscean energy, the age of Pisces is over with. We're in the Aquarian age. It's a 12,000-year cycle. So the characteristics of the Piscean age are fear, regret, bitterness, jealousy, greed, resentment. It really keeps you stuck. It's like you stop yourself on your path. And so the Aquarian age is wisdom, understanding, compassion, and love, your divine state of being. So when you are reviewing things, do I keep this? Do I let it go? Do I pay it forward? And I'm talking about your body, mind, spirit. I'm also really talking about physical things as well. That should kind of be, that's the coup de grace. That's the last part of the dance of life, is what is the stuff that's holding me back? And by the way, this doesn't mean that you're poor. It means you're rich in spirit. You're rich in your soul. And so I think, Gary, it's really been interesting when I look at all this stuff, that we accumulate, and yet here we are. What are we doing with this stuff? for a lot of women, are you really wearing every item of clothing that's in your closet? So it's a metaphor for what is the energy that you're carrying with you that's really no longer necessary. So we all need to take a look at that. The other thing that I really do want to talk about a little bit, in that merry-go-round path that you've been on, who or what is influencing you? Does there need to be a karmic healing and cleaning around that? And I'm not really pointing any fingers, but we've talked about this before. Gary, it's really interesting when we're in a chaotic situation, even in the metaphysical world, some of the teachers, I've been sort of, I don't want to say judgmental, but it's like, wow, really? I'm kind of a little disappointed that they're not walking their talk. And so it doesn't mean you're going to, cut the ties with that individual. But we do have to remember we're all human. You've heard this a million times, living, we're spiritual beings living a human existence. However, in the Aquarian age, this is when the soul and the self merges and becomes one entity, not even partnership. It's one entity. This is oneness. This is unified field of energy of oneness. So I guess you can't teach one thing and live another thing. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, I don't really want to point the fingers at anyone in particular, but, and I should say, wow, we have to step up as spiritual guides, teachers, counselors, however we label or call ourselves. I think it's really incumbent, if we're going to shine the light of enlightenment, illumination, bringing more light in, which is bringing in more awareness. It's never, ever been about who that person is. It's the teachings, because the teachings will live on forever. They're eternal. They don't belong to anyone. And I remember once, this is a long time ago, long time ago, and I was living in Sedona, and there was a woman there. She was a spiritual teacher. She was good, actually. I have to say she was good. And then I thought, well, maybe I should take one of her classes just to see what it's like. And she said, well, you have to sign a non-disclosure statement. And I okay, can you explain why? Well, this is my material. I don't want it shared. Okay, I understand copyright laws and I understand infringement. All I'm going to say to that is everything in terms of information, channeled messages, psychic readings, any of that. It does not belong to the person who is delivering it. It's information from the divine. It doesn't belong to you. When I'm saying you, I'm talking about teachers that are withholding or asking you to sign a non-disclosure statement, right? And I'm not saying I'm the queen of the universe, but anybody that's ever done any kind of training with me, attended a seminar, I hand the material. Look, share this. I want you to share this. I want you to help other people. This belongs to the divine. Add your own spin to it. I mean, none of this is territorial. So there's another teacher, a male teacher, and we're not naming any names here. I'm just trying to give you all, can I be my own leader of light? Can I be my own healer of self? Because I feel like at some point, it's like going to school. You have to leave the classroom, you have to leave the teacher so you can advance. So having an interdependent relationship with any kind of a guide or teacher, I think is fabulous. And I just want all of you to remember one thing. Hopefully what you are hearing is it's all about the teachings. It's never about the teacher. So for those of you that are on that path, that's something else you want to take a look at. And again, I'm not beating anyone up, but I do want to talk about this one gentleman. Gary, he taught about abundance, and he talked about financial abundance. He did talk about spiritual abundance. He actually was a very good teacher. However, that being said, he lived relatively close to where I live, and one of my friends was a stylist in a salon where he would go and get his hair cut. He never tipped anybody.
Ooh.
He never was here he is teaching gratitude classes and abundance and financial fullness and manifestation of this, and he never took. So she said to me, wow. And I'm like, that was shocking to me. It's like, you know what it was? It was disappointing. It was disappointing. However, I really didn't have a right to judge this person. What it did for me is I still paid attention to the sacredness of his work, and I had to keep it separate. So what are your thoughts on that? It's a kind of a conundrum for me right now. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a terrible, what he did or does is a terrible contradiction. And the reason why I feel very strongly about it, because in my own life, going out to dinner, the typical tip is 15%. Okay. But I would say for the past 2, if not 3 years, my wife and I, we have been starting our tips at 20% or more. Right. And Johanna, since we've done that, we've been blessed. I mean, so it's one thing to teach about gratitude and to freely receive and freely give and all these things about reciprocity, but it's another thing when you yourself are as a stingy, groveling, chiseling. I mean, I could use a couple other names. Anybody knows me, I'm good at that. But no, I mean that's it's a horrible contradiction.
It was so disappointing. I was really sad to hear that. So those of you that are listening, Gary, you guys are practicing what is actually a very ancient sacred teaching referred to as tithing. And so in a lot of the, for instance, in the Hebrew religion, and a lot of the other religions, it's sort of taken on a new texture, but it really what it is an energetic exchange. And so tithing means you say, okay, I'm going to dedicate a percentage back to, my church, my temple or whatever. And so I think, okay, that's interesting. I think that's changing for a lot of people too. So you're doing it in a personal way. For those of you, though, that have limited funds, you can still gift tithe energy helping another person that doesn't necessarily have a monetary impact on you in a negative way. So what does that mean? I'm seeing, which I think is wonderful, I'm seeing a lot of people sharing food. I'm seeing a lot of people going shopping for elderly people that, are really trying to be mindful and in lockdown modality. I was talking to a friend a couple of months ago, and I said that, I needed, what did I need? I needed a jar of spaghetti sausage. Oh, I have plenty, So that's the kind of thing that I'm seeing. So it's sharing energy. It's, I think I've mentioned this before. My grandmother, bless her soul, she was such a wonderful woman. My mother told me that in the Depression, and they were not wealthy. My grandfather was a house painter. And at one point, they actually even lost a house. So they were not wealthy people. But my grandmother in the Depression, every night, people would come to her back door and she would share part of the meal. And, there were 4 children, my grandfather, and then their cousins. There was probably 8 or 9 people living in this household. And you know what? She always gave. So all I'm saying to all of you is don't do it from a selfish level so you'll get more. Put another person in front of yourself and share and walk your talk. And here's another thing. I think this is really important. Don't brag about it. Don't brag about it. Because the minute you say, well, I did so-and-so, I gifted, so-and-so, what do? You just put a shadow over the generosity of your own soul. But so let's go back. Do you think people are looking for maybe a new path or a new way, or the old rules aren't working for them anymore? I definitely see a quest spiritually for people to have a more profound meaning in life right now. What I am seeing that's beautiful is families spending more time together, fathers being home with their kids more. I really have tremendous compassion for all of you with young children or grandchildren. I mean, it's really topsy-turvy in that energy. However, what I'm going to suggest adding to your game night is put some music on and just dance around with your family, or maybe after dinner, even before dinner. Do grace in a different way. Just sit at the table, be quiet, put some music on and just be quiet. Do something a little bit differently that intuitively works for you. I am not saying you should not be following a particular teacher or path that works for you, but maybe that's one of those doors on the left-hand side that you might want to take a look at. We're not judging anyone. We're not making anyone wrong. There are false prophets, and there are people that are hypocritical. You've got to ask yourself this question. What are the teaching? What am I learning about myself? What are the teachings revealing? Remember, it's a time of revelation. So again, I don't know. What do you think about that, Gary? I know you've had a lot of spiritual teachers that have kind of woven in and out of your life. And I guess this is a question. What do you think works for sustainability, that you can trust this particular individual and what they're bringing forth? And what do you have to be mindful of?
The truth, I would say this.
What do you think? I mean, let me just, I don't mean to interrupt you, but if someone is teaching you fear, oh my gosh, please walk away.
Run
that is not going to
away.
lift you up. That is going to pull you down.
Right.
Please don't do that. Please don't do that.
No,
okay, so what are your thoughts?
To me, the true teacher is the teacher that empowers. And there are two individuals I could name in my life that specifically did, if not three, who did just that. But I'm going to name two that I actually knew personally, interacted with personally. My karate teacher, my sensei, Alfred Gossett, he's passed away. He passed away in 1991.
Okay.
But he empowered me as a teacher where, from a student standpoint, it wasn't incumbent upon me to please him or to hold him in worship him.
Lift him up, yeah.
Right. And we did our lessons privately, but he empowered me in order to allow me to take the techniques that he taught me and to work on them myself. And he would tell me constantly, he says, do the things that will help you, stretch the limits of your power. You know the technique, you're given the technique, the forms, but always challenge yourself, stretch the limits of your power. That's what he always did. And that was my sensei. And then
so
Father
Charles. Hearing from you, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you. I apologize. However, I'm excited about this. So what I'm hearing and feeling is that through your practice, you developed determination.
Right.
That was a wonderful gift that he gave you.
Well, see, he also trained black belts to train other black belts. That was the goal. Okay, when I train you and you become black belt, then the mantle is passed on to you, and you become the sensei. So
right. So he's the teacher's teacher, and I think that's so important that even in the world of metaphysics and spirituality, you can study certain things, ancient teachings, particular practices that you can do that we sort of alluded to before. You're still going to put your own spin on it. It's like I always talk about, Mozart, child prodigy. He still had to learn the basics, and then he took off and put his own spin or style to it. And that's when he was really probably channeling with the creative, the divine force. So basically what you're saying is, okay, through my practice and determination, he opened the doorway. That's why I'm using this metaphor of doorways. He opened the doorway for me to fly on my own. Would that be a correct statement?
Correct. A true teacher teaches you and empowers you, but a bad teacher holds you under their thumb and leaves you in constant servitude to them. That's not teaching. That's false teaching, and it's bondage.
What would that look like, do you think?
I've seen it.
Like you have to come back every week and it's going to be, X amount. What would that look like?
Well, you have a bad teacher, you can have a bad student. I mean, we saw that in The Karate Kid. I mean, it was very well displayed, but it's true. You have a bad teacher, you're going to wind up having a bad student. You get exposed to bad bad environmental conditions,
Negative, right.
Negative conditions, those dysfunctions will follow you, and then that will be the only truth that you have and the only truth that you know. And as a result, you will spread that dysfunction to other people, whereas it will really do a number on your ability to not only find freedom for yourself, but to be able to be empowering and help others find their freedom.
So when you use a very powerful word, you use the word bondage.
Yeah.
If you have bondage to a teacher, that's one thing. What about bondage to the teachings? Is there such a thing as a bond? Look, I can only do it this way. I'm just curious.
That's another thing.
Okay, what would that look like?
What it would look like is that you have to do it this set particular ritual. You have to follow this particular criteria, and it becomes not empowering. It doesn't become enlightening. It becomes frustrating, and you frustrate yourself, and as a result, you get nowhere. You wind up going in circles.
Also becomes, doesn't it become an obligation on some level?
Well, that's why people do it. They feel obligated to do it. And when you're in that kind of a situation where you have to feel obligated to do something, then it's not going to work for you. And it ultimately will lead to some, it won't end well. Let's put it that way.
So for those of you that are listening, if you got nothing else out of today, maybe one of the doors for the future is, how can you open the door of devotion to a higher cause? And so I'm saying that the higher cause is, we're really here on some level to be in service. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the tipping or sharing food, or, it's the generosity of the soul. So I know that we've only got a few minutes left here, but okay, so that was interesting, that particular discipline and determination, and, kind of a springboard for you. So who is the other teacher? I know there's a teacher that you talk to me about a lot, a gentleman that you really, Father
Charles Moore.
Father Charles Moore, right.
I met him at the very twilight of his life. He passed away. We met in 2007. He passed away in December of 2007. But Father Charlie Moore he had spent years as a Jesuit. He is also the retired prosecutor of Santa Cruz County. So he was an attorney. He was a Jesuit and a very, very astute teacher. Now, he had also traveled the world to every single sacred site there is to see. And basically how our relationship clicked was the fact that he hit a lot of the notes of things that I had wondered about but never dared to ask. He disclosed and opened up truths to me that I had often wondered about in terms of church history, because being that he spent 7 years, he spent 3 of those years out in the Vatican. So you're basically talking about a guy who knew where the bodies were buried, so to speak. So he opened up history to me and allowed me to study it for myself, and then also hit the notes where, and that's where I could identify with how subservient, how subjective, and how religion can become slavery. Because you find yourself following rituals, you find yourself following, in the Catholic Church, it's a prime example. Confirmation is not a confirmation of you becoming Catholic. Confirmation is you conforming to the teachings of the church.
That's very true.
Right. It's about conforming rather than developing, rather than emerging, rather than evolving. And that's what Father Charlie focused on. And it was very liberating. Whereas for some, they were, oh my God, how could you teach such things? No, it was liberating for me. And, he often would say something to me. I wish I had the sound bite, but I play it sometimes on my podcast, that he used to accuse me sometimes at the end of the shows when I had the investigative report. He would have a statement that he would say to me, he would accuse me of. And I say, Father Charlie, I want you to close this program by accusing me of what you always accuse me of. He says, of being a happy man.
Oh, wow. Let me ask you a question, though, Gary. What if someone does follow a particular religious doctrine, and it really is comforting and, their life is happy. I always feel that, there's many pathways to the divine, to God, spirit, universe, and it's not like one size fits all. So are we really saying that religion is bad?
Well, not in its essence, because the essence of religion is taken from wisdoms passed down through ages.
True.
All right. So the thing that I, even as, a Bible scholar, because I studied the Bible, one thing I recognize, and this is another thing me and Father Charlie talked about, he says, understand that there's a huge difference between doctrine, because doctrine can be good. I mean, certain teachings, certain precepts, and understanding them and getting a good handle. Doctrine is one thing. The dangers of religion that we face as it pertains to or within the framework of doctrine is when it becomes dogma. So those two Ds.
Explain to everyone that's listening, what's the difference between doctrine and dogma?
Doctrine is teaching. Okay?
Right.
You are taught doctrine. Dogma is something that you are made to do. Dogma is something that you demand of others to do, whereas it is either my way or the highway. So understand there are beauties in teaching. There are beauties in doctrine. I quote the Bible a lot. I do, because there are beauties in the essence and the words of that book. But I do not engage in dogma to say that the Bible is the only word of God. The Bible is the only way. I do not, So that's what teachings is great. We always should be willing to learn, whether it be Judaism, Christianity, even Islam, Buddha. But the danger comes when doctrine becomes dogma, when you begin to inflict, enforce, and enslave. That's what really.
What I would say is that doctrine is the teachings and dogma is the rules.
Right. Exactly.
You got to follow them.
Yep.
So the other thing that I want to say around all of this to those of you that are listening, and we have said this, Gary, for, the 10 years we've been doing this show, spirituality is the umbrella over all religions. And again, when Mother Teresa was asked how she felt about religion, I love this. She said, I love all religions, but I'm in love with my religion. And so I think even in this Aquarian age, I'm not saying leave your church. What's something new and different in terms of the teachings that you can really embrace? I'm not saying you need to be a rebel against your religion or any other religion. How many wars have been fought using the rules of dogma? Have we really evolved beyond that? And I think so many people are desirous of that. We want to move away from that Piscean anger, manipulation, and fear, because the dogma would say if you're not following our real rules, there's going to be a consequence. That doesn't feel like a sacred teaching to me. So first of all, wow, we've really gone in a whole other direction about the reinvention of self. And I think the reason that we decided to have this part of the conversation at the end is for you to take a look on what or who is influencing your path, your decisions, where are the sacred teachings coming from. Listen to the song of your own soul, your intuitive self. In terms of creating the reinvention of self for the future, what are the feelings you want to connect with? Don't look at the material stuff right now. What's the carrier wave of divine creation, which is your feeling state of consciousness, the higher state of consciousness? And so give yourself permission to give yourself a new map. It's a map of consciousness. Let's close the doors to the path, bless them with grace and ease, take the wisdom with you in the present moment, and now turn to the right and relabel those doorways. What would it feel like, not just to be able to walk through, as if you're already there? So with grace and ease, there always needs to be gratitude. And our gratitude, as always, is to thank you for listening to Dialogue with Divinity. Our intention has always been to inspire you, to be creative, to listen to the song of your own unique, beautiful soul. And so we really want to send you a big heart hug, a virtual hug, and encourage you to be healthy, to be kind to yourself, to be kind to others. Share and give what you can. Don't do it because you want something back. Do it because it's the generosity of your spirit. We're here to help one another. And the world needs a big hug right now. So once again, this is Johanna Carroll. You're listening to Dialogue with Divinity. The conversation continues. We've got so many shows for you to listen to. You'll find us all over the internet. And you can always go to my website, johannacarroll.com, JohannaCarroll.com, and go under library and you'll see the listing of all of our shows. So I want to wish you all a beautiful day. Enjoy what the universe has placed before you as a wonderful, wonderful gift to give you a beautiful hug of your heart and soul. So many blessings to you all, and we'll see you soon. Bye for now.
Thank you.